Right.
the profit is increasing. So this is productivity increasing.
The productivity of capital will increase.
No. This is employee reduced, wages reduced, and
The output per worker will increase.
output increase.
Yes.
So productivity increase. Why you said no increase?
Well, basically, what it means that when that happens, the question is, will our GDP actually rise? Because will there be demand for those products?
Productivity increase.
There is no labor. There's no labor. There will be no.
Okay, extreme cases, no employees, no wages,
Right.
and no equipment, but sales.
Right. So how are we going to feed our people? How are we going to feed all those people? Are we going to redistribute it?
Unemployment, so they're going to might be basic income.
Might be. But do you think that
Government will pay.
But how will the government get the money? You think
Oh,
that?
you mean this is productive in all total in all nation?
Exactly, because our productivity is measured as the outputs as the GDP, but the GDP will come to a standstill because the prices will go up, so demand will go down.
Even if company improve their efficiency.
So you need to take.
It doesn't matter because we need to consider for countrywide.
Right. The basic.
But it doesn't make sense much. It doesn't make sense much. Okay, unemployment ratio is high because of the need to hire people.
Well, basically, Unno-san, like what happens, like if we forget about the physical output, and we're not looking at the physical output, we're looking at GDP, at the how is the economy
okay,
doing?
no. My question is, why? If so, why
Right.
you are talking about productivity at this definition?
Productivity is basically the output, right? But how do we measure output? As GDP, right?
Yeah, but you are talking about past 20 years no change, 20 years, next 20 years no change, but GDP is growing every year. But okay, so far. But why are you talking about productivity? We don't need to talk about productivity. Already.
No, so there is. Yeah, so that's why we're saying that GDP measurement is imperfect.
Not only GDP, but also productivity that's useless. What I'm talking about, useless.
So what I'm saying is that GDP will not grow very
Understand,
rapidly, even
understand.
though productivity will grow.
Understand, but productivity just.
So the physical productivity, ne?
You show the graph productivity, right?
Yes, Unno-san, no.
No. Well, okay, my question.
You're making a mistake in thinking.
No, your question is, your slide.
Yes.
Okay, your slide, productivity.
Right.
Why that kind of productivity slide we're going to prepare? What objective? What is the purpose? I don't understand.
We are thinking that productivity grows, right? We think the productivity, the technology will enable productivity, and that will lead us to higher incomes. But what we see is actually that's not happening. Why? That's the question. So you need to differentiate between the physical output and the GDP output. Basically, that's how we measure it, right? So we measure GDP as a financial value, as the sum of consumption and investment and government spending and imports, import export. So that's GDP. Now we are in agreement that GDP is changing rapidly. That's because how we assign value to it. That's the price times products. Now the products, we can see that there definitely is an increase in output per product, but the prices will change dramatically because of the way that our economy works. So when we are talking about GDP, we're talking about the way that we measure it. When we're talking about output, then we see that the output per worker is actually dramatically increasing with AI and IoT and all these things. So the thing is that GDP and our physical output, the way that we are capable of generating more stuff and better stuff, and the way that translates into our economy is actually not going because our monetary system doesn't allow us to grow. Doesn't mean that we're not making more stuff, but our GDP will not grow indefinitely. Will stay very stagnant. So you see the difference between the two? It's the physical productivity and the productivity as we measure it as GDP, output per head, measured in GDP. Now, why do we say that the GDP is imperfect and only captures about 14-15% of the value? Is that we cannot explain that.
Okay,
why
GDP
do we make so much more stuff, and why do we? Is our GDP not growing?
GDP is insufficient for the element. I understand. But
Exactly.
productivity. Why we're going to discuss this kind of define productivity? This is I don't understand. Why define productivity?
Because there is a missing factor. There is a missing factor here. There is something very important here. That infrastructure, that technology.
It means GDP definition wrong, productivity definition wrong.
Right, but it's wrong. No, we need to take it in consideration, and then we will see that we live in a.
The other way. Useless. This kind
imperfect.
Imperfect. That's right.
Right. Imperfect.
Okay, I understand. So
imperfect.
Yeah. So next week you are going to continue this video.
Right.
Later,
Yes.
And what is the focal point is, we now GDP we need to consider, just you said, energy.
Right.
And for example, utility.
Not only energy, actually, it will mean a lot. The technology in itself will mean that basically we're going to organize in a different way,
climate change.
in a different society.
Climate change.
Yes, climate change will be something that we need to address, but there will be a lot of other things that will change, also for Japan.
Okay, I understand.
So yeah, so I think it's a very interesting point because it basically questions a lot of things. And why?
I understand. So far in the history, you think GDP, you're thinking productivity.
Right.
That is, you think yourself, but it's not accurate.
Exactly. So our minds are completely conditioned by the models that we have invented to describe the reality, but we forgot to look at the reality and only look at the models to indicate what we should do, and we are ignoring a lot of things that are very, very important. For example, the technology. For example, the way that our environment. Those are not part of the models, and therefore they stay out of our consideration. And this is actually, I would believe that this is more a fault that we can trace back to Western culture than we can trace in Japan. There's a very strong belief in models in the Western world, much less so in Japan.
If so, I think if you consider for China, current, for example, Chinese airport and airport population, influx is Japanese Narita airport. China is 20 airport. Each of those is almost supersede Narita airport. It means their influx numbers 20 times bigger than Japan. Okay? A simple comparison. People moving 20 times bigger than. Of course, they have another 80 airport, but we don't exclude.
Right.
Japan, Haneda, only Narita are small.
Right.
But China is the same size of Narita airport size is 20 or more. So just simple comparison, they have 10 times bigger than us. The current GDP is 5 times, but actually 10 times bigger than us. Okay, it's double, currently double. What this means is bigger than United States. Simple comparison, right? So how much they are utilized, you spending utility or oil,
right,
or transportation like an airport.
It's almost 50%.
This sort of calculation we have never done it before.
They actually do it. There are numbers there. I came across it. The amount of energy consumed by China is really enormous if you look at it.
So it means military is very easy to compare.
But for China, this is actually a problem. And if you look at changing this infrastructure in China, they're moving so incredibly fast in changing this, much faster than Western society, because basically their energy infrastructure is completely outdated. So for them it's a and they can do it centralized, right? They can say, okay, we just dictate this to happen, and then it happens. And unlike democracy, where you have all kind of rent seeking and democratic.
Democracy is another issue, but I don't believe democracy is the best. Okay, so if you consider for social everything, economy, politics, social community, or everything else, and what's going on now, or 10 years later, what's happening? This is very important. Currently, we are defined all traditional measurement, so we cannot accurately judge which country is strong. Right? So you are trying to talk about. I understand what you mean. So we need to discuss more next week. It's a very interesting issue.
So I'm actually thinking about Monday. What shall we do on Monday? Because Monday we last Monday we didn't have a meeting, did we?
Continue.
Okay.
I'm going to ask
Takashi.